It's the Fellowship of the Geek Show, a weekly podcast about comics, the comic book industry, and other geek pop culture. Music courtesy of Manny the Martyr. And now, on with the show!
Hey everybody, it's the Fellowship of the Geeks podcast. My name is Thomas Chick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Marlowe.
Hey gang.
Les Webster.
Hello all.
And Liz Newman.
Hello everybody.
How are you guys doing?
Doing well, thanks.
Peachy.
Hope everybody out there is doing okay. So what's been going on in your corner of the galaxy?
Well, I finally did it.
Damn you all to hell.
No, it took, I don't know, maybe it just seemed like it took a long time, but I finally finished the Secret Wars trade. We've all been talking about it already, so I don't feel bad about bringing it. I'm not going to talk about what I thought of it, because that we are saving for later, but it just seemed like it took forever to get through that sucker. I don't know why. It's a pretty big book. I mean, let's be honest.
It's a big book.
It is.
I mean, that is 12 big issues. But again, we'll deal with that later. So now I'm finally getting to read some of the floppies I picked up a couple of weeks ago. Catching up on some stuff. So, yay, comics.
Yay. We like comics.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Can't prove nothing.
No one saw me.
Yep. Well,
Yes.
I'm excited that it's October. This is like my favorite month out of the whole year, so I have started my 31 days of October, which I watch something Halloween related for once a day, every day for the rest of the month. I don't know, I may go till Christmas if I like it enough, but yeah, I started that, and I'm still chipping away at some of my trades too. But other than that, that's about it.
Well, what have you watched so far? It's only the second as of, well, we're recording on the second.
Right.
So.
Well, I started off with Tim Burton, Nightmare Before Christmas. And then today I was going to watch Corpse's Bride, but I decided not to because I wanted a refresher on what we're talking about today. So I watched that.
Oh, good. You did your homework.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. Got accused a couple of times of watching porn, and it was like, no.
No, there's not any of that in this movie.
He just breathes like that.
Wow.
Yeah, I waited till I got home and finished watching it here, you know.
Apparently someone's idea of porn's a little kind of
Well,
weird.
if you're not seeing it and you're just hearing it from another room, I could see. You know? So.
Somewhat skewed.
All right.
Yep.
Fine.
But tomorrow is the Addams Family, so.
The whole
Yay.
series?
There you go.
Just the movie.
Wasn't there more than one?
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be the first one.
Okay.
So when do you break out the Munsters movie?
The Munsters movie?
Mm-hmm.
Take that as a never.
I think that not anytime soon, so that's okay.
I may have to look that one up.
Sounds like a challenge.
Yep.
I'm glad you're doing that. That's cool.
Oh, I said push yourself, you know. I have favorites, but I have a few on my list I haven't seen yet, so we shall see.
And we're helping.
One of them. Yep. Oh, yeah. I had to refresh my memory on the movie that we're talking. Well, I'll talk about that later, but yeah. But yeah, definitely, yeah. I've watched quite a few movies that I didn't think I'd watch. And a couple that I was like, what the hell was that?
Happy to help out.
Gotta keep you on your toes. That's the whole point of exposing you to new stuff is, you might not like all of it, and that's okay.
Yeah. But I can say I've seen it now, so.
You can say definitively that you don't like it.
Right.
I know that's crap.
But I always tell my kids with food and stuff, you have to at least try it once to say you don't like something. So some of them I'm trying once.
Well, I hate beets, so.
Beets?
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong with beets?
There's no substance to it.
It depends on how they're cooked.
Pickled.
Or if they're cooked. Right.
Oh.
Eat it raw.
I've been just pulling them out of the ground and gnawing on them.
Uh-huh. Try a little salt and pepper, man. Jeez.
Okay.
If you must.
Well, I picked up an old book. A1, The World's Greatest Comics. This was a publication from, I think it's 2011. And it's a collection of stories that the comic book A1 put out. A1 was a publisher from Britain. And included in this was a story by Joe Simon, Jack Kirby, Dave Gibbons, Bill Sienkiewicz, Scott Hampton, Jim Steranko, Alan Moore and Michael T. Gilbert, James Robinson, Kevin Eastman and Simon Bisley. It's a real quick read, but it's a fun read.
Never heard of them.
I'm sorry?
Never heard of them.
None of them? Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
That's quite a crowd, man. Jeez.
It's really good stuff. And then today, yes, I rewatched the movie that we will be discussing, and I also tuned in to watch the movie Q, The Winged Serpent, and wondered why the hell did I watch Q, The Winged Serpent?
I was kind of wondering too.
As I say, it kind of sounds like it would be one of those kind of movies.
It's so unfrickin' believable, and yet they want you to say thumbs up.
You don't have to.
Well,
don't they have a thumbs down option?
But where they were talking about it, I was thinking that thumb doesn't want to really be there either.
Must be amputated.
The thumb is glad it doesn't have ears or eyes.
True. So that's about what I did this past week.
Cool. Oh, and I forgot to tell you guys something.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. I have my friend Juan who, he does Uber now. And so he sent me a message the other night and he says, "Hey, do you know who Jim Lee is?" And I'm like, well, duh. Is this a baited question? So I'm sending his credentials over and everything else. And I'm like, yeah, why? And he's like, yeah, I've been driving his mother-in-law around town all day today. I'm like, what? Come get me. Let me talk to this woman. But something about his son goes to school down here. And she was down here visiting him. And, I mean, she just wonderfully sings his praises. What a nice guy he is. And 5-bedroom home, completely pays for everything for her. And this is his mother-in-law. I mean, not even his mother. So, but it was like, wow, only you. And he's like, yeah, I told her that was cool, but it was DC. And I said, well, he worked with Marvel for a while before we stole him to our side. But, yeah. they have Stan Lee, we have Jim Lee. It works. So, yeah, I thought that was pretty cool, though. It was like, wow, out of all the places this kid could go to school, Dallas.
SMU?
I guess so. But he said he picked her up quite a few times, so he drove her all around Dallas, I was like, wow, that's pretty freaking awesome.
That is
So now
cool.
I have a friend who met.
Yeah. How many degrees of separation?
Right.
Now, Mrs. Lee, you may not know me, but
Right.
She ain't Mrs. Lee. She's his mother-in-law.
Right.
My friend. Yeah. Well, I'm sure he sent me the message while she was in the car, so I kind of was there. I'll claim it.
Texan while driving. Okay,
That's not good, right? Jeez.
There goes his Uber rating. I'm sorry, Juan.
yeah.
that's what you get for being a Marvel guy.
Right.
All right. Now that the name-dropping portion of the show is over.
Yeah. That was our celebrity portion.
That was our TMZ moment.
Pretty much.
Yep.
I had picked up another trade. It's the Bronze Age of Brave and the Bold, Volume 1, which, after kind of started reading it, I was like, I have read a lot of these before, but it was still kind of cool to go back and look at, because these were tales from like 69 and 70, team-ups with Dead Man, Wildcat, Teen Titans, and all that. But it was kind of fun to go back and reread those. Something else that I meant to mention a while back that I started doing, and then I kind of got away from it because due to things have been going on in my life. But started back up this past week because I kind of needed to do it. As longtime listeners of this show know, I do watch a lot of stuff on Twitch. And I guess it was about a month back, it came to my attention that that they were working on reorganizing the non-gaming side of the site to make things a little bit easier for viewers to track particular categories. Like, for example, tabletop gaming. It's actually tabletop instead of it being listed under Dungeons and Dragons, because there's obviously more than just Dungeons and Dragons. But basically, like under IRL, which means in real life. But that would also be like people doing cooking streams or working on their costume for cosplay, or even computer programming, or showing off their musical skills, playing keyboards or guitar or whatever. But they announced they were trying to work on this, and I showed it to the guys because there was also the category about podcasting. And for those who go back far enough, might remember that at one we were talking about bringing the show back. Mike and I had actually looked at possibly streaming on Twitch, but decided to go obviously with the podcast route. So that kind of caught my attention, but something else caught my attention. And there is a category called ASMR. So I started kind of checking this out, and I try to, I watch it. It helps me kind of calm down. And if you're not familiar with what that is, it's just pleasant sounds that, if you put your headphones on and listen to it, it kind of relax you. There's a small percentage of listeners can actually kind of get a tingling sensation, but it's just a calming, relaxing, and there's most of the people who do this have videos on YouTube, but they've started coming over to Twitch and doing live streams as well. You know, they'll some of them may go on for an hour, and then they'll do reruns of their other streams, or some of them may do 2 or 3 hours or something like that. But it does help me. You know, I've kind of listened to it, especially on nights when we do the recordings. Mike has mentioned this on a previous show, where when we get through recording these shows, because we do it late on Tuesday night, you know, it's time for us to start thinking about going to bed, but we're still kind of bouncing off the walls and all that because of just having so much fun doing the show. This actually helps me. This actually helps me relax and start kind of calming down, start kind of winding down. And I didn't think it would. It's amazing. I could be sitting here listening to it, and 5 minutes later, if that, I've noticed that my eyelids are incredibly heavy. It's about time for me to shut everything down and just go to bed.
You are getting sleepy.
I am getting sleepy. So I've started back to listening and kind of viewing those streams again to kind of help me kind of unwind. And you know, I recommend that for anybody who has a problem trying to wind down, or just, you know, life can be really stressful for you right now. Just listen to this. It's amazing what technology they have. There is a speaker, which it took me a long time to figure out what was going on. The design of it. It's basically a box speaker, and on both ends are shaped in the form of an ear on either side, and that's what they're kind of using. It's just the simplest thing. So it's like some kind of I'm not even sure what you call it. It's almost like something you might put on your head for to keep it from. It's like almost kind of like skull cap, but not really that way. But you know, they put this on this speaker box, and then they start kind of moving their hands around it, and it sounds like ocean waves. It's amazing. You're just like, that's what you're doing to be able to make that sound. And then just some of the other stuff they do. It's just, I recommend it. You know, you just go to Twitch and categories. Just click on non-gaming, and there's one just called ASMR, and just check it out.
Can I try it now?
Can you wait until we're done recording? Sheesh.
Oh, okay.
Few hours.
That's okay. That car that's going to come by you is going to wake you up anyway, so why do it?
Oh, well, there was a motorcycle while you were speaking, so yeah.
No.
Could always go back and watch that movie again, Les.
I don't wish that on my worst enemy.
Alrighty. With that, before we get into this week's topic, I want to take a couple moments to thank the fine folks at Things from Another World for being a sponsor of the Fellowship. They've got some great deals going on right now. If you want to go to our website, www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, and click on the sponsors tab, you'll see what's going on. Right now, they've got 40% off comics, statues, toys, and merchandise, 30% off select pre-order manga titles, and 50% off Nick and Dick comics, just to name a few. While you're on that page, you'll see an image for Things from Another World or some links. Just click on those. That will take you to their website and let them know that we sent you their way. And just knock yourself out. Hey, it's not too early to start thinking about Christmas. You know, start thinking about the geek in your life that you got to buy a Christmas gift Or buy yourself a Christmas gift. There you go.
The power of one.
Uh-huh. So thank you once again, Things from Another World, for being a sponsor of the Fellowship. Alrighty. We are continuing Horror Month with a little bit of a comedic bit this year. And for this week, we wanted to discuss a film that I'm not sure how well known this one is. I remember hearing something and seeing something about it a long, long time ago, and watching it and thought it was a very funny film. It's a little weird, but definitely fun. There's some funny parts to it. And this is actually probably one of the first parodies of the slasher films. It came out in 1981, and it's called Student Bodies. Have any of you guys heard about this before? Way back when?
I remember watching it on TV real late at night, but it's been a while.
Right.
Yeah, I remember you making me watch it when you found it, so yeah.
Right. Well, I wasn't going to say that, but that's okay.
No, it's fine.
the horror.
Oh, you have no room to talk, Les. You have no room to talk. But, okay. So, what were your thoughts of this film?
It was funny. I liked the beginning where they showed the house. And it's like Friday the 13th, Halloween.
Jamie Lee Curtis's birthday.
Yeah.
Yep.
And although it would have been funny for them to find the kid with the bubble gum so you could actually kill him.
That would have been funny.
I kept waiting for it because it's like they set it up all through the movie. But yeah, it's definitely one that you think it might have a plot, but then when you get through watching it, you realize it didn't.
But did
Maybe.
you care?
No.
Did you care? You're just like, okay, that was interesting.
That was a thing I watched.
That was something I watched, yeah. And it's also one of those that they change on you at the very last, 10 minutes to where you're like, what? What? That guy's not really that guy, but yeah, it's, like I said, it's when you have to at least see once because it is funny. Definitely funny. He makes a lot of prank phone calls. Breathes real hard through a rubber chicken.
Click.
Click. I think the best part was when he said, I have a confession. I've been secretly naked underneath my clothes all these years. Because then you're like, oh my God, me too.
It's a funny movie. There's no doubt about it.
And everything that people make fun of the 80s slasher films for was in this movie. If they had sex, they died. That was what actually got them killed in this movie. So, no fighting back.
Right.
I think the first murder was a paperclip. So.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. Chosen from a big selection of murder weapons.
Yeah. And then when you get through the middle of the movie, there's the guy sitting there at his desk, and he's like, to keep our R rating, you had to have nudity and blood and violence. And since our movie has none of that, I would just like to say, fuck you. They start putting the R rating up on the screen. So it's like, yep, that's all it took in the 80s, drop an F-bomb,
There was no PG-13 yet then.
No.
Yep, that's true.
Didn't exist.
But although there was no frontal nudity, there was a lot of girls running around in bras. And in the 80s, that would have kept it from being PG. Anything. That was like risky business, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was some there were some overtones. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Sex. There may not have been any nudity, but sex was a kind of a major point in the movie. So,
Yeah.
Right.
It was.
which was kind of sort of they had. It was kind of a no-no, but there was like a long list of ways around it in that time period. But yeah,
Yeah.
especially the whole teen sex thing.
Yeah. No one got, well, you can't wash herpes off. It's like, what? Alex, I will take the things you do not say to a woman before you get into her bed. Like, wow. Even after a shower, it would have been no.
Yeah, but see, then the movie wouldn't have moved along. The plot, what little plot there was, wouldn't have moved forward.
True. And I figured out the sponsors of the show were Dr. Pepper, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Dunkin' Donuts, and Coors.
No, they were nowhere near subtle about that, were they?
Oh, never.
Nowhere near. They didn't know what subtle was. I mean, then again, this is not a movie that handles subtle a whole lot either.
Not at all.
True.
So I'm wondering, after watching it and everything else, spoiler alert, but I guess it was the boyfriend all along? In both the dream and in the real?
No, not in the dream. In the dream, it was the principal.
Or the principal's mom. Or, well, yeah, it was both of them.
Yeah, and this is and that's the point where the movie takes a left turn away from reality really hard.
Goes flying out a window real hard.
Pretty much. And you know, for me, that's part of the fun of it. I mean,
Yeah.
who watches those movies for the ending? I mean, in all reality. So
True.
just go nuts, have fun with it, do something crazy.
Well, I'm kind of reminded of Blazing Saddles. How it's a straight western, and all of a sudden they basically taken a left turn, and you're obviously on the movie set and all that. You're just going, what? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Or I mean, and honestly, one of the clear references there is the Wizard of Oz.
Right.
I mean, it's pretty obvious. I mean, she wakes up from the quote unquote dream, and everybody's the opposite of what they were in the dream. And yeah.
What was her coma from? Being sexually frustrated? Was that what they said?
Did they say? I don't know.
Sexual repression.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I admit I have not seen it in more years than I care to admit, probably 30 years. And so I tracked it down and got it and watched it, and I enjoyed the hell out of it just as much as I did the first time around. I mean, I am pleasantly surprised, Liz, that you appear to like it as much as you do, because for me, this is like the Kentucky Fried Movie of horror movies.
It is.
and I know how you felt about that. But, so, yeah, this is just right up my alley. I'm like the prime target audience for this movie, which, given that how many movies I actually watch, is kind of sad, which explains why it didn't make just a ton of money. But yeah, this movie speaks to me, so I obviously have high and strong opinions of it.
See it.
And there's that noise again.
Yes.
Because we love Phil.
Someone has been noticeably absent from this discussion. Les.
I'm listening to waves right now.
Okay.
Oh.
What's your
Sitting
opinion
back-
of? What's
I'm
your
sorry?
opinions? What's your opinion of horsehead bookends?
I couldn't believe his wall had so many shelves with horsehead bookends. That guy was demented to start.
Just a little.
Just that guy?
Those staff.
A lot of people in that movie were demented.
I enjoyed Liz cracking up about this more than I enjoyed the movie. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but it was just a sight gag after sight gag, like the movie we covered last week. There really wasn't a catchphrase to carry it on. How do you say that the balloons in her dress were a catchphrase, but every time she moved, they had the balloons squeaking? I would have to sit down and watch it a third time, I guess, to fully appreciate it. When I was watching it, the movie that came to my mind was Saturday the 14th. The movie with Tommy Smothers.
Saturday 14th? I thought that was like Richard Benjamin and Paula Prentice.
Oh, was it? Okay.
I could be mistaken. Could find out.
Oh, that's the one.
That's okay. It's not a big deal, but that's what movie came to my mind.
Yep. Richard Benjamin and Paula Prentice. Jeffrey Tambor.
I
don't think
funny. This movie came out the week before Saturday the 14th.
Wow. And I don't think I've seen this one.
So, yeah, I mean, more than likely they were not, unless they were like shooting them right next door to each other. They were not ripping each other off in any way because they were shooting them at the same damn time.
It definitely sounds like it.
Mm-hmm.
Student bodies.
That's not to say this didn't have funny parts, though.
Yeah, it had some funny parts.
I laughed.
And I don't have a problem with that either.
You know, when I watched it, it kind of reminded me of Scream. They had their, the doobie and everything else in there too, the little simple janitor guy. Who I thought, okay, Scream made their movie after this one, so I almost expected the janitor to be the one killing everybody. So when he wasn't, it was kind of like, huh, okay.
Malvert.
Yep.
Malvert P. Red.
He made the punch.
Well, I didn't mean to bring this down, folks.
Yeah, I, for one, do not have a problem with the fact that you didn't like it. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
We don't all like the same stuff. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's true.
Although knowing you like the other ones that you recommended to me, I'm surprised you didn't like this one. Yeah. So as a Halloween movie, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if I view it as a Halloween movie either, but
Yeah. It needed a little bit more scare in it, kind of like Scream did. They had a good horror thing going on behind the comedy and, that kind of stuff.
See, you and I may be remembering Scream differently. I don't remember it being that funny. It's been a long time since I saw it, but
there was some humor in it, but it was kind of it was a jab at the slasher films, but I don't. It's definitely more horror than it was comedy, where this is just let's do a bunch of crazy shit.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It does. Like I said, Scream had its funny moments.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think.
Well,
maybe.
And I also, I'm not gonna lie, the movie Scream popped into my head a few times watching this again too. I mean, I agree there are some parallels. I'm just like,
Yeah.
you're laughing about Scream, and I'm like, I don't remember laughing at that movie that much. I mean, I remember it having some clever moments, but nothing ha funny,
Well, it was kind of cliche, and I guess that's what made it funny. When she's screaming, and you could tell it wasn't like a "oh my god, I'm scared" kind of scream. It was just kind of a "ah" kind of scream, But and then he's in the mask and he calls and he's like, "What's up?" I mean, there definitely had some moments that was like,
yeah, that's not dated or anything,
right? Yeah, that kept it, I thought funny.
I think maybe my brain aligned it more with Scary Movie than it did with Scream.
Maybe that's the one I'm confusing it with then.
Yeah.
Maybe I am thinking Scary Movie.
That would make sense.
Scream is with Courtney Cox, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And
Okay.
Scary Movie is the movie that basically
Anna
parodied
Faris.
Scream.
Right.
So maybe I'm thinking of the parody then.
That would make sense. That would make a lot more sense.
Right. I'm not psycho.
No,
I
that's
don't laugh
that's
at
another
murder.
show. That's another show.
So yeah, maybe I'm confusing it with the parody. All I could see was the Scream mask. Which in this movie, we don't even see a mask or a face or anything till...
Because we're not supposed to know who it is until the end.
Right.
That's one surefire way of keeping the killer's identity secret is don't put the camera on his face. Hey!
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's the simple things. Yet another camera trick.
So was it the female lead that caused all this?
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons, not to get too meta here, I think one of the reasons the conversation's fallen apart at this point is because this is not a movie that bears analysis all that well. I don't think you have to think real hard to overthink this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, and if nothing else, the ending supports the idea that, there's not a point here. This is just pure silliness. And it's done kind of geared toward the, at the time, brand new slasher genre.
Yeah.
I mean, there were certainly enough movies already for them to have plenty to work with, but because boy did that genre take off really fast.
Well, in the opening scene, it said it was based on a true incident, that there was 26 horror movies made last year, and not one of them lost money. So, quite a few to pick at. But if you think about the time period, we had Halloween and Friday the 13th. 80s was that a little bit before Elm Street was coming out, and it was just a lot of...
Prom night.
Yeah.
Yeah, Terror Train, My Bloody Valentine, Happy Birthday to Me, that kind of stuff. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah. I mean, they saw what Halloween did and said, "Hey, we can do that and make it more graphic, and we can have some fun and make some money," and they did.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and think about it. Student Bodies came out 3 years after Halloween,
Right.
and there was already enough. It was already enough of a subgenre that there was plenty to mock. So
Right.
That people understood.
yeah,
Yep.
I mean, there was enough of this stuff going on that they knew people would get these references. So yeah.
See, and that's one thing I found myself wondering if, in 81 I would have been 5. So I'm wondering if, like, our movies today, we can point out the movie that it's making fun of, or, the instance that it's taken from. So I'm wondering how much of that we kind of miss out on not being from that time. Does that make sense? What kind of pop references we're missing?
Maybe. I mean,
So,
to an
just
extent.
me? Okay.
No. Well, I mean, no. Your comment about being 5 is throwing me off. I'm like, this movie's not aimed at 5-year-olds. I mean,
Right,
but,
definitely. And I didn't watch it at 5, but
I mean,
I'm saying the lingo and stuff,
I mean, we probably found this. We were probably still in high school, right?
Right.
When we discovered this movie, and we had at that point already watched enough of these to get the jokes.
Yeah.
I mean, we're probably 17, 18 years old.
Right.
So, I mean, you in a sense, you don't really have to watch that many of them to get it.
Because frankly, we hadn't at that point.
Right. I mean, we'd seen at least the first 2 Halloweens, maybe a few more than that at that point. I mean, I've never seen the first Friday the 13th movie all the way through. Even today, I haven't. I've never seen Prom Night. But there's enough there to, I mean, now I think it's even easier today with social media and the way information flows today. It would be even easier to get a sense of what these movies were before you were to go see a movie like this.
Yeah.
But we were doing it back in the late 80s, so I mean, we were getting the jokes. We had enough exposure just from what we were seeing, because there's magazines devoted to horror movies. I mean, you don't have to read very many issues of those to kind of catch up. You can, and what would take you 6 months back then with those horror movies, you can do in 15 minutes today. So
Yeah, that's true.
I think it's not as big a deal as it was when we were kids. It's easier to kind of get up to speed on that sort of thing. I don't know if any of that really made sense to what you were saying, but
No, it does. But you know how, like, when Avengers comes out, the next day it's like, here's the 50 Easter eggs you may have missed.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of makes nods and references to other things you might have missed, Kind of the way that, what did y'all say the parody of Scream was again?
Scary movie.
Scary movie. Kind of like it, you could tell the horror movie, the exact horror movie that they were going after,
Yep.
So.
Well,
That's what
admittedly, that particular case was less than subtle about it.
Yeah.
I mean, they were obviously going for Scream. They threw other stuff in.
Yeah, I was say there was quite a few different movie references in that one.
And that whole concept is kind of a subgenre of its own anyway, that whole parody movie thing.
Yeah.
That took off. I mean, honestly, this Student Bodies was a really, really early version of that. I mean, they existed, but there weren't many.
Yeah.
Like I said, Airplane was before this.
Yeah.
Blazing Saddles is a less specific one, but I mean, it did the same thing for westerns.
True.
And it wasn't necessarily a brand new concept at the time either. So Yeah, there are some. I think there are some interesting details in the making of this movie. Anyway, did y'all notice the one glaringly interesting thing in the credits? I'm not sure we've ever talked about this on the show before.
Don't think
Alan
so.
Smithy.
Alan Smithy, producer credit.
Oh,
was
yeah.
given to Alan Smithy.
Yeah.
If you've never seen that before, Alan Smithy, quick history lesson. Alan Smithy was a pseudonym that was specifically used by the Directors Guild of America when a director. You got to remember, this is back in the days when studios had a whole lot more control over movies than they do now. I mean, they still have control, but no, it was bad back then.
Yeah.
But when a Directors Guild of America card-carrying member directed a film and decided that the studio had interfered too much with it and they didn't like it anymore, they would ask to give credit to Alan Smithy, because that way their name didn't have to be on a movie that they weren't essentially they had no pride in whatsoever, that they didn't feel like they were associated enough with it.
Yeah.
And that went on for 20, 30 years. They finally did stop using it. I think it's this thing, what I'm reading here, this says they stopped using it in the year 2000. But
Oh, I didn't realize it was that recent.
yeah,
I know David Lynch did that with Dune, with like the longer cut. I think he had his name taken off. Oh.
yeah. And sometimes that was how it happened. Was it would be you'd have multiple releases one way or another, and it would be on one version and not the other. But yeah, so and apparently in this particular case, the reason I kind of thought this was an interesting little rabbit trail was that the person who is kind of afterwards backhandedly credited with producing this movie and actually co-directing it, although it didn't. I don't remember if he was listed in the credits. Was a guy named Michael Ritchie, which was a name I actually was not directly familiar with. But man, I looked at the list of movies he directed, and damn, there's some interesting stuff in there. Does the name Michael Ritchie ring a bell with any of you guys?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Mm-mm.
How about The Bad News Bears?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
The Survivors?
Okay.
Wildcats?
Okay.
The Golden Child? Both Fletch movies?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't do just a ton of movies. I mean, had like a 30-year career writing and directing movies. And some pretty decent-sized hits here.
Yeah.
But I still didn't recognize his name right off the bat. I had to look him up. And apparently he, somewhere along the line, decided he didn't want to... He served as producer for this film and didn't want the credit by the time it was over. I'm like, I'd love to ask him why, honestly. I mean, it's not possible anymore. He passed away in 2001. But, like I said, I like the movie a lot. So, seems weird to me. But, oh. And the dude who got the main writing credit was Mickey Rose, and he was primarily a TV comedy writer. He had actually started out with Woody Allen. They worked together early in Woody Allen's career. And Rose went on to write for TV for a long time and wrote the lion's share of this movie. So yeah, it's just some interesting kind of backstory there.
Or if that was meant to be like a ha-ha kind of thing, you know. I don't know.
It's possible. I mean, Yeah, given the movie, I mean, yeah, you do kind of have to wonder if it was meant not to be serious. But I don't know.
You never know.
Like I said, he had at that point he may have decided that it just didn't work the way he thought it was going to, and
They didn't want to be associated with it.
and didn't want it dragging his name down because he had done some pretty good movies by then. So before then, hard to tell.
The rubber chicken just pushed it over that line for him.
That could have been it. That could have
It
been
did for me.
The one other interesting, or I don't know how interesting this is, but the one other little tidbit that I learned was this movie was shot in Houston.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yes, yeah, I had read something about when the phone rings in the beginning of the movie, instead of it being like a 555 number, that it was an actual phone number, and if you call it, it rings to like a sports bar in Houston.
Whoops.
Oh, that's good. Nice.
Gee, I wonder where they hung out.
Right.
That's probably why Michael Ritchie didn't want credit for this movie. He still had a bar tab at that bar.
So, overall, we liked it, except Les, but that's okay.
But that's not to say not to rent it and watch it. I'm not going to ban that part of it.
No. I mean...
You didn't hate it that much.
Yeah.
No, I did not hate it that much.
You know, it's always like...
Just decided that much, but not that much. No, it was okay.
You know, one thing I'm always telling Brandon, though, to really appreciate all this crap that they watch today, I said you have to watch the older stuff. Even if you don't like it, you just have to watch it to see where it's come from, you know?
Yes.
The leaps and bounds that we've made just with special effects alone, you know? They don't know how good they have it. We grew up on slasher genre movies, you know. So, but it is when you have to at least see once, you know.
No, see, but the deal there really is no, you don't. No, you don't. I mean, I agree. For me, to backpedal a little bit here, for me that's interesting, is to go back and see how things start. But I also am self-admittedly weird in that regard. It is entirely not necessary to have to watch. I mean, we talked a couple of weeks now about the new Halloween movie coming out. My guess is, would that movie make more sense if you've seen the first one? Probably. Do you have to watch the first one? No, you don't, because, I mean, honestly, to be real mercenary about it, you're gonna give the movie theater $12 to go see the damn thing anyway, whether you've seen the first one or not. They don't care.
Right.
But I mean, honestly, they're making a movie so that it makes an entertaining movie. They're not making a movie so that it has historical significance. That doesn't mean anything to. I almost said to modern movie-going audiences, but that's not true either. It's to any movie-going audience. I mean, ultimately, at any point in the history of movies, they don't. The majority of people don't care what came before that. They're there to be entertained for an hour and a half, 2 hours. That's all that matters. I mean, is it interesting to do the historical part? Yeah, sure. For some of us, because we're wired differently, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with that.
I guess I'm wired differently.
Yeah, and we all are. It's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, keep in mind, ultimately, no, it doesn't matter. I mean, if it matters that much, then the movie's not going to be successful. because people are going to go in there, they're going to watch it that first weekend, they're going to go, that didn't make any damn sense, and they're going to tell all their friends not to go see it because it sucks. And then it's not going to sell, so they're not going to do that.
Right.
Sorry, I guess I had to overanalyze something tonight since we can't really overanalyze this movie.
You had to go there.
See, that's and apparently that's the thing I like to do is overanalyze stuff.
But I see now that the release of a new version of A Star is Born is coming to the theaters.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And this is third or fourth time.
Oh,
Probably third.
Knows? Oh, at least. You start looking at the same movie with different titles, and there's probably way more than that.
True.
I mean,
Yeah.
that theme is not an original one by a long shot.
No, but I'm looking back at your statement, Mike, that you don't have to watch the previous stuff to try to understand what you have in front of you. If you want to sit and watch the original A Star is Born, more luck. if you want to watch the Chris Christopherson Barbara Streisand version, walk away. Just watch the new one. See what Bradley Cooper can do with Lady Gaga.
Right.
See how that goes versus, so many other different movies that are of the same vein. Even Sunset Boulevard.
Right. You're not going to get anything out of watching a previous version of that movie that you're not going to get out of that movie. And it's, I mean, yeah, absolutely. There is no connection there, and there doesn't need to be.
Well, I don't mean it in that sense, kind of like a prerequisite. I just mean,
No.
look at the horror movies we had back then compared to, like, The Purge and stuff today. I'm saying to really appreciate, I guess, what you're watching, not understand it, but appreciate it. You kind of have to see what we went through to why we're like, that's all right.
But see, that could just be you wishing evil stuff on whoever you're talking to at this point. Yeah, you young people today, you got it all.
Get off my lawn.
The sacrifices we had to make
Exactly.
for you to get these films.
Well,
They had to wear masks back in our day. Now they just CGI over them. And
Yeah.
well, I'm going to throw it out there. It's kind of like The Walking Dead. We really like that and everything else. No, wait a minute. Give me a second. Let me put my squirrel at the starting gate.
We were so close.
Yeah.
So close.
we almost made it.
We almost made it.
Well, he's kind of like, well, I like zombies. Well, how do you know you like zombies? I mean, what history do you... There's nothing to compare it to. You know what I'm saying? As to me, I can go back to several different movies and references. I can say, yeah, that's a good zombie movie because I have things that I've seen and some that I've regretted seeing, Not that you're an expert on it, but you kind of... I lost my squirrel.
The squirrel is gone.
But you know what I mean?
I think
kind of like the first season of Doctor Who compared to what it is today. They didn't have the CGI. They didn't have the amazing, special effects that they have.
Color. They didn't have color.
Right.
Well,
even film grade.
Right.
It's kind of like the bumps on a record. You don't get that with this pure quality they have. But to appreciate that instead of going, this is all right. Well, we lived through the first season of it when it was black and white, so we're like, man, this is freaking amazing. Look at what they did to this. So I'm kind of saying, if you like something, it's good to see the past so you can really see where they've taken it today, And how we went from Chucky to Annabelle, or so not that to understand that movie, but just to understand really what they've given you as far as what you're looking at and how well it's written, and that's what I meant. And also, Night of the Living Dead, when he made that movie, he didn't make that movie going, oh, I'm going to make an historic movie here. But he did. Now, I don't think any movie's ever set out to be, this is going to be a defining moment in time. I think they've missed the mark, but they just kind of happen that way, you know. With him, he had a cult classic, and it became a defining moment. Not that he set out to make that the defining moment. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's more of what I meant. I think.
We'll run with that.
But I do like it, like you were talking about with Halloween, that the younger generation can come in and watch it without knowing the history. You know, kind of a standalone. If nothing else, it'll get them curious to go back and watch the older stuff.
I think you're being optimistic there, but okay.
Well, if it's really good, it's kind of like your favorite band. You hear this song and what else have they done? You know. So.
Kids today.
Right. They just don't understand.
No.
With the motor scooters and hula hoops and all that.
Marijuana pills and infidelic drugs.
I say maybe they could stay on the lawn then.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
All right. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up and take a break?
Yeah, less is wrong. It's a great movie. Sorry, man. I had to do it.
That's all right.
He was confused.
Go out there and watch it. Decide for yourself. And then come back and tell me how bad it really was.
But if you do want to watch it, it is on Amazon if you have the Starz subscription. If not, it'll be on cable on Encore. Yay.
There you go.
It's good to know.
It is coming up.
Alrighty. With that, we will take a quick break and come back with our weekly picks. And we're back. It is time for our weekly picks, and Les leads off this week.
Well, thank you. Coming up first is Action Lab's new book, Albert Einstein, Time Mason. This is by Marcus Perry and illustrated by Tony Donnelly. What intrigues me about this is Einstein leads a team called the Time Masons to protect the integrity of our timeline. And when a threat puts the past, present, and future in peril, it's up to the squad to save the universe before time runs out. So seeing Albert Einstein as an action character is, to me, going to be one of the most intriguing things that's coming down the pike. And as a result, I'm in on this.
Sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, I saw that one. Thought it sounded interesting too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Liz.
All right. My first one is from Titan. It's called Remind. This is a story about right before you die, they say that you can, your life flashes in these moments, And in this book, the FBI has found out how to do that, to where not only can you see those moments, but they can see those moments and go back to certain time periods and maybe pull some information that you've been hiding. So with this technology, one of the main guys, his son, gets put into a coma because of it. And he's kind of left with the decision, well, because you can only use this on their deathbed. They're going to die. That's the only time you can see the memories. So now that it's his son, is he going to let him use the technology, or is he going to try and save his son? So should be a pretty good story, kind of a weird Black Mirror kind of story. So should be pretty good.
Yeah, this one caught my attention too, so I'm definitely curious about it.
Vaguely reminiscent of a Poe story that I cannot remember the name of off the top of my head. But anyway, sounds like fun.
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me of the Black Mirror episode where they can go, it's kind of like Google Glass, but it's their eyeballs.
Yeah.
And they can go and pull any moment that they can think of, and throw it up on the TV screen for the husband to watch, or, That was a pretty interesting episode.
Mm-hmm. It was.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, Mikey?
Okie dokie. Well, mine doesn't have anything to do with time, so...
Surprise.
Yeah, I know, big shock. Black Mask is putting out a new title called Devil Within. This is issue 1 of 4. This is a story about a newly engaged couple who moves into an old house, and it basically turns into supernatural horror from there, so, sounds like fun to me.
Yeah, this is another one that caught my attention. Definitely would like to pick this one up.
Yep, I thought it sounded neat.
I'm with you there, too.
Alrighty, for my first pick, I'm going with a new series from Aftershock Comics called Last Space Race. And it is about an anomaly that's noticed out in space that has caught the attention of the world, and we basically are going to have two competing tech gurus putting together projects to go out into space to investigate this. So that's why they're calling it The Last Space Race. This is written by Peter Calloway, who has written for the TV series Legion and Cloak and Dagger, both Marvel properties, and also wrote Under the Dome. This one's kind of caught my attention, and Aftershock's been hitting on all cylinders for quite a while, so they could have another hit here.
Cool.
Sure hope so.
Alrighty, Les, you're up again.
Up for a second time. I'm coming to you with Spook House number 2. This is the scary stories fit for kids, and it's going to be interesting this time. This is a weekly through October, and in this issue you've got creators like Brett Parson, Eric Powell, Dave Johnson, and to me the one that really stands out is William Stout. Those are your essentially your writers and artists for these stories. So just looking at the cover of it is one that will set you into fits of laughter. It's that funny. So give it a shot.
Cool.
Neat.
Cool.
Alrighty, Liz.
All right. My second pick is one it's on my wish list for sure. It's Girl Power, Amanda Connor Gallery. This will collect her Power Girl 1789, DC's Wednesday comic, the Supergirl feature, and Before the Watchmen Silk Spectra Saga, as well as an assortment of cover art from the series. 12 by 17 book that's on heavy stock paper. They said that they did like 200 lines per inch, so we're getting like what her actual artboards look like for these. Really nice book. It's a sewn book, binding on it, hardcover. Like I said, just with her artwork alone, you can't get these anywhere else but this collection that DC's putting out on these. So if you're an Amanda Connor fan, definitely have to pick this up. It should just be gorgeous.
Nice.
Sounds pretty.
Very, very pretty.
I'm with you.
$125 though.
Well,
yeah.
that's pretty much what the artist editions that IDW pretty much come out with, and those are definitely worth it.
They definitely are. They say these are museum quality. So.
Dang.
Yep.
There you go.
Yeah, the couple of artist editions I have are pretty impressive. The ones I have are the Walt Simonson Manhunter series, and then the first volume of Jack Kirby's Commandy. And just looking at the 2-page spread from the first issue, and this is, I believe, 11 by 17 size.
Wow.
A page. And this is a 2-page splash, and it's unbelievable.
That would be amazing. Like I said, I definitely wouldn't mind drooling over this one.
Yeah, you don't really want to drool.
Right. From
You
afar.
you don't want to damage them, but yeah.
No, right. Think about a slobber cup or something. I don't know.
Right.
A spit cup or something.
So Christmas is coming up, you know. It's October, I can say that now.
Alrighty, Mikey.
Okay. Strangely enough, I have an art book here too. This is put out by Dynamite, and this book is called The Art of Trauma. It is a hardcover art book, which compiles a bunch of the art from the, dare I say, 1,000 movies that Troma Studios has put out in the last 40 years. And if you're not familiar with Troma Studios, I'm a little surprised because, not terribly so, but they are what is probably the most successful indie film company in the last 40 years. Primarily because they're still around after 40 years. And they are well known for their, I probably won't offend them by saying schlocky horror action movies. They are very low budget movies, and they put out a bunch of them, and some of them are actually really fun. But again, this is an art book, and it's actually written by Fred Van Lente, of all people. Which I thought was interesting. And Troma has launched the careers of a surprising number of movie makers that are doing really well in Hollywood right now and in the past. So this ought to be a really interesting book to check out.
Yep.
Definitely.
Yes, sir.
Alrighty. For my second choice, I am going with a collection from DC Comics. This is the first volume of The Terrifics. And this collects the first 6 issues. And this has been a really interesting book. When they first announced it, there was obvious comparison to Marvel's Fantastic Four. And it's valid to a degree, but it's been really kind of interesting because these characters are basically bound together by an accident. This is kind of resulting from the Dark Knights event from earlier in the year, and it's been kind of an interesting book. Just seeing them kind of interact with each other and try to resolve their situation, how they can free themselves from each other, because they cannot get too far away from each other, otherwise they'll die. So, but I've enjoyed the heck out of this, and now if you've not had a chance to pick up this book, here's a chance to get the collection, and then you'll be pretty much caught up.
Neat.
It has been a good series. So, yeah, take your time and go pick this one up.
Mm-hmm. Our honorable mention this week.
Our honorable mention this week, I believe I was selected to talk about this one, which is funny because Liz is the one who was talking about going back and checking out the history of things. IDW Publishing is releasing a book called King of the Comics, 100 Years of King Features. And so this is a graphic novel history of the first 100 years of essentially newspaper comics, specifically geared toward King Feature Syndicate, which started out in a William Randolph Hearst paper a long time ago, or in his newspaper empire anyway. And so this is going to flip back throughout the history of newspaper comics, and there's a ton of names of these comics that everybody knows. Popeye is well known as being a King feature. Flash Gordon, Beetle Bailey, Blondie, Prince Valiant, Hagar the Horrible, and it just goes on and on and on, of course. So this is for those people like me who like their history books and like to go back, and people like Liz who like to go back and check out the beginnings of where things come from. This is a great one to pick up.
That does sound good.
Nice. I know Dynamite earlier this year had done a bunch of miniseries featuring the King feature characters to celebrate the 100th anniversary, and so it's nice that we have this collection coming out, kind of telling the story, and of course having, I'm sure, a nice assortment of strips in there as well. So it'd be cool to check this out.
Yep, should be fun.
Alrighty, any special shout outs this week?
Actually, I'm gonna off the cuff throw one in here.
Okay.
This is a kind of a podcast related one. One of the podcasts I listen to on a regular basis and I've mentioned this on the show before, is an actual play D&D podcast called Murder Dice. And essentially what I'm doing right now is congratulating one of the guys on that podcast, David, who is patiently awaiting the birth of his first child. So congrats, David.
Awesome.
It's very cool.
Mm-hmm. That is cool. I love babies.
Alrighty then. With fava beans and a nice Chianti.
There's a reference.
Mm-hmm. I hate to follow that great news with some sad news, but I think we would be remiss if we didn't mention a couple of passings in the comic book industry. One late last week was the passing of Norm Brayfogle at the age of 58. He had had a stroke about 4 years earlier, and that caused paralysis on his drawing side. But loved his work on Batman and Detective during the 90s, as well as his work on the Prime book for Malibu Comics. Just such a striking visual. I mentioned it on social media. The thing that always impressed me when he was doing Batman is how the figure would look like a normal human being, and then literally the next panel, it looks more like a supernatural form. And it's just, it kind of really plays with that whole image of Batman being a scary figure. It's just such a unique look. Even when he was doing Archie, it was a House of Archie style, but you could look at it and go, that's Norm Brayfogle's art. It was just so unique. You could just see it. Loved his work, and it's just so unfortunate to him to pass away so young. Do y'all have any thoughts about his? I know Les is familiar with his work, but I didn't know if other guys were.
I am familiar, and what you say is right. It's very distinctive, but it was so impressive. I'm sad to hear that he did pass at such a young age, and hopes and prayers go to the families. But Norman Brayfogle gave us so many perfect pages that his memory will live forever.
Mm-hmm. The other passing, it just happened yesterday, as of us recording, of Carlos Guerra, and I'm pretty sure I butchered that name.
Escarrera.
Yeah, thank you. Spanish artist. He co-created Judge Dredd and Strontium Dog. Did Just a Pilgrim. Another incredible artist, so influential in the industry. I found out pretty quick when I got on that morning, because I follow a lot of artists, and bam, everybody's mentioning how he was so influential to them. And yes, some beautiful art as well. If you're not familiar with it, definitely go check it out. And our thoughts and prayers go to his family and loved ones and co-creators, and everybody else who was influenced by him. One other thing I'd like to kind of point out, I should have done this last week, but I can make up for it this week and keep reminding y'all throughout the month of October. We're big fans of Turner Classic Movies, and of course, with it being October, they're throwing out a bunch of great horror stuff. So I wanted to point all this out to you. Every Sunday in October, they're doing a slate of mummy films. So we've already missed one Sunday, but download this episode. Thank you for doing that. Listen, and then turn over to Turner Classic Movies and check out the films. Every Wednesday in October is Horror Stars. This past week, the 3rd, would be Lon Chaney Sr. But from there, we go with Christopher Lee, Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi, and we end up on Halloween night with Vincent Price.
Oh,
Nice.
That's a great list right there.
it is.
And then finally, on October 22nd and 29th, which those are
Mondays.
Monday nights, they are doing 200 Years of Frankenstein. So they're doing a series of films both nights. And there's also a debut of a new documentary about the Frankenstein myth. So I'm kind of excited. I was not aware of that, and I'm excited to check that one out. So there you go.
Very cool.
Of course, all the networks are going to be start pulling out horror movies and that kind of stuff, but but TCM does it the entire month, and they always have a good supply of films. So I definitely wanted to point that out. So
Yeah, and I think Freeform started their 31 Days of Halloween too.
okay, that's cool. Alrighty. So that's what you're watching? Is that where you're getting the 31 days?
No, because they lost their rights to Tim Burton stuff. So I forget who got them. So their Christmas lineup is going to be screwy this year too, because they lost Harry Potter too.
Oh, thank God.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God. That I've never understood that, but okay.
I didn't either. I think because, like, for 2 seconds in one of the films it was Christmas, but I'm not for sure on that.
Well, they might as well show Die Hard, too, so,
Yeah, I think they do.
Probably. I don't think on Freeform.
Yeah, probably not on
Somebody will
Freeform.
show it.
Somebody does, like Spike or...
Yeah, everybody else will, but yeah.
A true Christmas movie, yes.
No.
Any other special shout-outs or announcements or anything like that?
Nope.
No.
Okay. We'll do our regular shout-outs. First off to Manny the Martyr for supplying our music for our podcast. We'll have a link to their music on their show notes if you want to check that out. I also want to shout out Podern Family on Twitter for spreading the word of the fellowship. If you have not done so, we recommend you go check them out. All you got to do is just go to Twitter and do a search, hashtag Podern Family. That's one word. And just kind of scroll down, and if you find an episode that catches your attention, please download it and check it out. And you never know, you might have picked up another show that you want to listen to. We think you will. And finally, you, dear listener, thank you for downloading today's episode. We do appreciate your support. We value your feedback. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, observations, complaints, we would love to hear from you. And there are several ways you can do that. Email at thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, or you can go to the website and click on the About Us tab, and there's a contact form that you can fill out. Please follow us on our social media. We're on Facebook, The Fellowship of the Geeks, and on Twitter, we're at Fellowship Geeks. And if you like to follow our personal Twitter accounts, please feel free to do so. Mike can be found at Mikey Geek. Liz can be found at Newman_L. And I can be found at TomTCGeek. And wherever you download our episodes, whether it's through iTunes, what's Google now being called, Mikey?
Google Podcast.
Google Podcasts. Okay. iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spotify, or YouTube. If you would please rate our show, And if you have a couple of moments, extra moments, a review would be awesome. Any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
Just thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again for listening, everyone. We do appreciate your support as always. And until next time, read more comics and support your local sports.
We thank you for listening to the show. Comments, suggestions, and questions can be sent to email at thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can follow us on Facebook at The Fellowship of the Geeks and on Twitter at Fellowship Geeks. Until next time,